Welcome to the Ball and Blockchain podcast. I'm Nils Smith, joined by my co-host Justin McKelvey. Justin, welcome to the podcast.
What is going on? So good to be back. Happy to be talking crypto NFTs again, to get away from normal life for a little bit and focus on what's really exciting. So here we go. What are we talking about today?
We are talking about cryptocurrencies and our favorite cryptocurrencies, what we're investing in, why we're investing in it. I think this is probably the number one question I get all the time is, what should I buy? And to be clear, this podcast is not financial advice. You hear that a lot in crypto land. This is not financial advice, and this podcast is not financial advice. But I think it's valuable for us to share how we invest in crypto and what we invest in and why we choose those projects and what that's all about. So, yeah. So, Justin, where do you invest in crypto? Like, what tools do you use? Maybe to start with to buy crypto.
Oh, such a good question. Interesting question, just in general, because you have to use specific tools sometimes if you get excited about a specific token or blockchain specifically. You have to use the tool that they sell it on, because you can't just buy everything at Coinbase, which we've talked about a lot here. It's a little more popular. Crypto.com, you're probably seeing a lot of ads for now. They're getting a lot of investors. So you see a lot of ads on TV for Crypto.com. So I'm using those specifically. I try to go that route when possible, just because everything else funnels through there. It's easy to track. But if you want to get into a few of the side, like altcoin side projects, sometimes they're not available. They're not available in the US. So you can't buy them directly on any US exchange. You have to put money into a US exchange and then transfer that to an overseas account and then use that account to buy that coin. So it gets a little tricky, but those are two popular ones right now. Any other ones you want to touch on?
You used a term, though, and so we want to keep adding definitions of altcoins. What's an altcoin?
Altcoin. Well, kind of a vague definition is anything that's not Bitcoin at this point, as people are using as altcoin. But I don't know. In my head, some things like as Ethereum is probably the second most popular that people understand. So it's like, all right, I don't consider that an altcoin anymore, but it's just not Bitcoin. So a few things will move into mainstream and be stable, a little more stable coin, which is a thing as well, that you can invest in versus an alternative coin that people are trying to gain traction with. So you get into this place where has it gained enough traction to be considered not alt anymore? I don't know. I don't know who determines that or where that comes from, other than just community going, yeah, we like it. We're in. So
yes. It's so practically, where I continue to buy a lot of the two places that I buy most of my cryptocurrency is on Coinbase and Gemini. And that's where I have primarily connected my bank account to move funds into purchasing new coins. And then I exchange on different platforms. And that's where I get into a platform like Spooky Swap or Pancake Swap.
Sushi Swap.
So Sushi Swap. And that's, and I think it could get more complicated. We'll have other episodes on swaps and exchanges. And that, I think gets into the nerdiness of blockchain, which we want this podcast to get into. But the coins that I would say I'm most into right now, Litecoin has been my go-to for a long time, primarily because I have a Litecoin miner. So I have a mining machine here in my home, and it generates about $3 to $4 worth of Litecoin every single day. And so Litecoin is a coin that I have, and it has generated over $1,000 worth of Litecoin for me in the last year. And so it's a coin that I just like. It's built like Bitcoin. It was built after Bitcoin with a lot of the same foundations of Bitcoin. But I think my opinion is it took the learnings of Bitcoins and some of the shortcomings of Bitcoin and created a better Bitcoin. Is how most people describe it. It's not nearly as popular or valuable as Bitcoin, though, to be clear. So Litecoin is something that I have been invested in for a long time, even before mining it, which I started doing probably a year and a half ago. So that's my kind of my go-to, I would say, from the beginning. The other coin that I am most invested in, and I guess there's maybe two others, is Pre-Search. So PRE Search. And there's a couple of reasons I'm deeply invested into pre-search. I got into it, and we've talked about it here, and we'll talk more about nodes. But they have a node system where you could help run their network, and pre-search is a website, basically a search engine for Web3. And I think we should do a whole episode on pre-search because I think it's a fascinating project. But I believe in their decentralized search network. I'm helping to run it with nodes. I'm rewarded by running these nodes with pre-search tokens, but I've also bought pre-search tokens and I stake pre-search tokens, and that's a complicated process, but it gives me extra tokens in return for running the nodes and staking my tokens in their network. And so pre-search is a project I believe in with their website and what they're doing around decentralized search. So that's where I've got the highest percentage of my crypto investments. And then second to that is Strong. Strong is a token that's built on the Ethereum blockchain, and it is basically built. If you with 10 Strong tokens, you can buy a Strong node, and then you get rewarded with about zero point 0.1 Strong a day. And so it's where a lot of people in DeFi, decentralized finance, talk about passive income, and having a node that they're running, and they call it node as a service. It pays me back, and so I initially bought one Strong node with my Strong tokens. I've since bought a second with the rewards I got, and so it's generating new Strong for me every day, and so I'm pretty deeply invested into that project as well. So I'm looking at using crypto that generates more crypto is what I've really been focused on, Justin. So those are the like 3 coins that I'm most invested in right now.
Interesting. I feel like we should definitely, I'm just going to go ahead and say it now. Our next episode is going to be covering pre-search because I've got 75 questions to ask right now. So go ahead and, this is just a plug, tune into the next episode because we're definitely going to do that next. Because I just wrote down, if you heard me typing in the background, I was taking a bunch of notes on things that I want to ask and talk about because I haven't really dug into pre-search too much other than what Nils has hinted at before. So I'm intrigued on that entire process and ecosystem. A place that I've heavily invested recently is, well, I'll say 2 things. You said something a second ago that you said, I'm using crypto to invest in crypto. And I think that's it sounds kind of weird, but it's something that happens all the time. And I've kind of shifted my mindset over the last couple months in a lot of ways I haven't invested a ton over the last month because I'm refinancing my house. So I'm refinancing my house and I'm pulling some cash out so I can take that cash and reinvest it into other assets, which is exactly what you're doing with crypto. You're taking out a loan to buy another asset that will then cash flow. So you're kind of doing the same thing. So crypto, you're like, all right, I spent $1,000 on crypto. How can I make that crypto produce more crypto? So it's like having a rent house in a sense. It's like having a node. You're like, I own this thing. And how can I make sure it's also returning cash to me? So just trying to like connect that analogy for people. As you said, there's several words in there like nodes and staking and all of that it's going to be too much. So I'll say tune in to the next episode and we'll define some of that.
You know how, Justin, I would define it though, just to give it a quick definition. Sure. I feel like it's like buying one of those self-serve car washes where I bought a node. I don't have to do much with it, but people keep pumping their quarters into it. And so every day I get I'll just take the quarters out of the machine. And if after I have enough quarters, I go buy another car wash if I want to.
Good analogy.
So it's kind of like an investment into something that makes me money, but it's an upfront investment. It's letting my money make money. But yeah, that's how I see it.
That's a great analogy. I think here's another layer to that I think we should talk about. We keep saying talk about more later, but I'm like, we're talking about it.
We got lots of episodes to come.
I know. Is if you're going to buy that car wash, sometimes you can resell that car wash, and sometimes it's a one-time fee and it's gone forever, depending on the type of node you buy. Like one of them, you're just buying it from the company and it's $0 at that point, but it's still going to make you more quarters from the process. And then others are, I bought that thing. Now I can either transfer it or I can resell it, or I can just cash out at any time. So kind of interesting how nodes work depending on the project and ecosystem you're doing it in.
Yes.
But in this process, in the past month, I invested into two things fairly heavily. Is Luna, which is based on, that's a stable coin for Terra on the Terra network. So they've got a lot of things happening right now that are small. And so there's, I think, a lot of people getting into that project because, I'm going to call it a project, getting into that token because of all the things that are being built on top of it right now.
Yes.
That it's only set to go uphill later. So I've gotten heavily into that because there's so many different avenues and so many different businesses that are basing how they're building Web3 things on top of that network, that it's going to be tough if it doesn't succeed. It's going to be kind of, it should be the anomaly if it doesn't go somewhere. So I invested heavily in that. I also got into strong nodes. I got my first strong node this past month. So I purchased one of those, which we can talk more about, but you have to own 10 strong tokens in order to purchase a single node. And then once you make that purchase, then those are gone forever. Like you now own that. You can't cash out strong. Yes. Other
you can't cash out strong nodes. You can't cash out strong tokens.
Yes. A token is just like Ethereum or Bitcoin or whatever. You can own that token, but once you have the node, you cannot just say like, I'm done here, let's cash this in.
Yes.
I've been looking into a bunch of other nodes. I started to read up on them, and so I'm kind of taking the last month. Like I invested where I could, but have been busy, so I didn't really dig into anything new other than those two. I started to read a little bit about Thor. I know they offer different nodes, and they have a little bit different of a system. But yeah, that's kind of where my money is at right now. I would say like percentage wise, I'm probably most heavily invested in Luna and Strong, and then I'm still kind of obviously Ethereum, which I have some of. As everything is dipped this past month, I've just bought more, where a lot of people will be selling because they're scared, which is kind of our nature, is to like, hold on, I'm not sure what's going on here. How do I back up and cut ties before I lose too much? And I've just kind of doubled down on things. So I'm all in. Web3 is going to be where it's at for the future for me. So yeah.
I think, I mean, would add a couple other tokens, but the question I get a lot, and I'm curious your stance on this, is how much Bitcoin, how much ETH, and people often assume that I probably have at least 50% of my crypto in Bitcoin. I would guess it's probably closer to like 5% of my crypto holdings of Bitcoin. And I'll explain my rationale. I'm curious yours. And I would say probably I have about 5% in Ethereum. I primarily hold Ethereum. While I believe in Ethereum, I like high risk investments, and I like projects that I think are going to move and that I can really monitor. While I do think Ethereum and Bitcoin are going to grow in Ethereum more than Bitcoin from a percentage standpoint, it is I'd say they're boring to me, and so it's almost like the utility of it. Of I can actually go buy things with Bitcoin sometimes, so I like having some Bitcoin for that purpose. And I need Ethereum to exchange things. So when I buy an NFT or I do certain things, I need Ethereum to do those exchanges. So there's utility there. The other utility tokens that I hold are FTM, so Phantom, and AVAX are the two other kind of utility tokens that give me functionality. I don't really hold them for value increase. I hold them for functionality and exchange. Now that said, a couple of projects that I'm also invested in from a crypto gamble standpoint, maybe, or almost like a stock investment, are DAG, D-A-G, which is Constellation. Constellation is a cryptocurrency that is actually being used by, I believe it's the Air Force is using it, or some military function, and really interesting back-end development within their network that they're doing. And so it's one I hear a lot about, and I've heard a lot about from people I really respect in the space. And the research I've done, I think it's an interesting project. So it's one that I've put some money into. I've seen it double in the last 3 months, but it's one that I think could really grow this year based on the research I've done. So it's not making money other than just the value of it increasing like a stock. And the other is XRP. XRP is people have a lot of opinions about XRP. And
what's your opinion?
My opinion is that it's worth the risk. So I have about I have 913 XRP tokens. And I've watched those, I've had those for a couple of years. I've watched those go up and down quite a bit, but there's a lot of regulation we're basically waiting to come out of how the government approaches XRP, and they have gone through a lot of work to try to become basically the first regulated cryptocurrency, and approved through the legal process. And so it's going to be really interesting. I think if some of those outcomes turn out positively, the coin could really grow. If they come out negatively, it could basically become worth nothing. And so I have about $1,000 sitting in XRP right now, and we'll see what happens. That could turn into $10,000, and it could turn into 50 cents. And so those are kind of the coins that I have that I'm sitting on, that are connected to projects that I think are pretty interesting and have opportunity to grow, but they're not in that kind of cash generating network like I'm invested in the other ones.
Interesting. For the record, to repeat again, this is not financial advice because Nils is very risk averse. So his risk tolerance is higher than mine. I'm like an early adopter light. I'm usually like right after Nils into something, and both fairly early. But he's finding more projects and more entertaining stuff that's higher risk. He likes scratch offs. I don't. So if, that's my analogy anyway. So just keeping that in mind.
I go buy more scratch offs with the scratch off until I'm out of money.
Yes,
my approach to gambling, and so I go in to lose, and I'm good with that because I think it's part of the learning process. So I am the last person that anybody should take financial advice from. So that's my cue of you can take my financial advice if you want to consider it that, but it's not necessarily a good idea because I'll while we're giving just crypto stories maybe, and then we can wrap up this episode. You and I both invested, I think I probably more significantly than you, into a project called Ring, which I was very bullish on and excited about. And Ring was worth about $400 per token. I think I had up to 12 tokens at one point, and then Ring went to about 50 cents. And I basically never got any of that money back. And so it seemed like it was too good to be true, and I thought, man, I found a money printer here that I'm going to just be tripling my money and over again, and this is going to be amazing. And I essentially just gave some people my money who ran away with it, and so there's that's what comes with risk, and it's. I saw it happen with that. There's another one called, I think, Superhero Coin or something, or Soldier Coin too, and same thing. And so these risky projects that I have jumped into, several of them have gone to zero, and so some have grown. Pre-search is growing, or like DAG has doubled, and Litecoin has probably tripled since I got into it a few years ago, but it's it's all risky, and I think it's important to know that as you go in. So these are the coins, and these are the why behind why both of us are investing. Any other thoughts as people start looking at what they want to invest in?
Well, a few different things. I think, like from what you just said, is I'm going to let Nils make the mistakes before I make them. Then I'll make less mistakes, and then you could potentially make less than me. And so you'll win by listening some more. But I got into Ring just like Nils did. It's another term we're going to discuss, but rug. That entire project got rugged. If you look up Ring nodes, you can read about that on the webs. There's very controversial who the founder was. It was not a secret project, but essentially nobody knew who the founders were. I forgot the right terms on that right now, but there's words for that. He was not public. Nobody knew who it was. And he basically just disappeared.
Yes.
$400 went to pennies within 2 to 3 days. So I probably had somewhere in the 8 to 10 token range as well. So I lost a chunk of money there, but there's a term in there that when I was talking about Thor nodes earlier, Thor is a fork off of Ring. So fork in dev software engineer world is you take somebody's existing project and all their code and you fork that. Essentially, you just copy that into your own version of that. And then you can then update it and call it your own and make it better, different, that kind of thing. And so most of the other Ring forked projects, everyone kind of considered failures because like, well, if Ring failed, then we're out too. I want nothing to do with anything else associated with them. But Thor has kind of hung on. So they're still kind of in that, they have a decent little community going. Something's happening. That's one I'm kind of watching close now. I haven't invested in yet, but was kind of listening in and reading up on that the last week. But a few extra terms there and a few different things to get into.
Good.
Got anything else?
I will. So the term that people give, and I might be. I need to. I'm not going to give the accurate path. The term people use for investing though is dollar cost averaging. And I'll tell you how I think that's what that means, but I don't know exactly.
Which is common in all investing is just a comment, not crypto, just investments in general. Dollar cost averaging is a term.
Okay, so what I understand it to mean is that basically you put in your investment. Once you've made your investment back, you take that out and pocket it or put that in something else so that everything else is then profits and gains. And so you can always be, you take your profits as soon as you possibly can, is how I understand the strategy to be with dollar cost averaging. Am I saying that right?
I don't think that's right, but
Google it.
No. Hold on. I want to Google it right now. I can't leave us hanging. Okay. So I've heard it a different way, which I think they might actually just go together.
Yeah. This is why we do the podcast, because we're learning out loud.
Yeah.
As we're doing it. Now that is a strategy that I said that in one of my discords that I've learned from a bunch of other people that they do is they'll put in their money and then they take it out with a lot of passive income projects. But dollar cost averaging is a strategy I hear a lot among crypto investors that I don't know that I understand. Do you see it?
No. So I think so. Yeah. So I'll read this definition in just a second. But I think what you described is a smart investment strategy. I don't think it's dollar cost averaging.
Okay.
That is a different thing that a lot of people use for investment strategy as a whole for stock portfolios. Like just over time, if you know Apple is going to be going up.
That's dollar cost averaging.
Yeah. You'll want to be buying at consistent intervals over time. So it's like, all right, I'm going to buy $5 of Apple stock once a week, every Friday at noon. Yep. And it really doesn't matter if the stock value is down 10% or up 20%. You're just consistently putting money into a specific stock or portfolio. And over time, the dollar cost average is going to go up because you're just getting into something that's continuing to grow. That's the idea behind dollar cost averaging.
And the research has shown, because the challenge is a lot of people are trying to play the market and like time. I'm gonna put it in when it's low and then take out when it's high. And it's been shown that if you just put in every week or every month consistently, it will do better than you trying to predict when's the right time to put in. And so that's dollar cost. Good.
Yeah, which I think, so dollar cost averaging, I think, is a smart thing to do with stable coins. Stable coins, not necessarily. Altcoins are going to have a lot more market fluctuation because they are more dependent on stable coins. So if Bitcoin goes up 10%, an altcoin's going to go up 150% just because and inversely the same thing. It's going to drop drastically compared to it. So dollar cost averaging on a more stable coin that has consistent low growth over time is a smart move.
Yeah.
Anyway, I have a few investor friends that I know listen to this, so that all they do is manage stock portfolios. So if you're one of those people listening, I won't name names, and you want to get on the podcast and help us clarify some of these things that we don't know because we're just talking through it as we learn, ping me on Twitter or something and we can talk about it. I'd love to have you on. Yeah.
Good conversation, Justin.
I love it, man. It's such good stuff.
Go buy some crypto.
Buy and then transfer $5 of it to somebody else so you can learn how it works in your wallet. It's another fun tool.
Bing. All right. There it is.
Bing.
Thanks everyone for listening. If you would, if you're getting value out of this podcast, if you're learning alongside of us, leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever it is you're listening to this podcast. It would help us reach more people with this content and sharing and furthering Web3 and blockchain technology with others. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again on the next episode.